Hi, this is Zach Wheeler. Welcome to the Phillies Show.
Ruben Amaro Jr., Jim Salisbury, Todd Zolecki. It's Monday, June 9th, 2025. Gentlemen, I hope you guys are doing well today. You have a good weekend other than outside of the baseball?
Better than the fightins.
Yeah, better than the fightins, that is for sure. The Phillies get swept in Pittsburgh this weekend. It's the first time. I mean, there's so much to unpack here about what's going on right now with the Phillies. It's the first time the last place Pirates have won 3 games in a row all season. The Phillies have lost 5 straight. They've lost 9 out of 10. I went back and looked. The last time the Phillies have lost 9 out of 10 games was June 12th to the 23rd, 2019. The game that they won in that stretch, just to give you a little perspective on how long it's been, the relievers that came into that game were J.D. Hammer, Juan Nicasio, Jose Alvarez, Edubray Ramos got the win, and Hector Neris got the save. So it has been a long time since the Phillies have had a bad stretch like that. And we talk all the time how every team's going to have stretches, bad stretches. Every team's going to have slumps offensively. Every player's going to have struggles. But it's been a long, long time since the Phillies have played this bad for this long. They are now 37-28. They're 4.5 games behind the Mets. They're only 1 game up on the Cardinals for the 3rd wild card. You know, you think about it. The day that they split the Braves in that doubleheader on May 29th, they were 36-20. They had the best record in the National League, and they had a 2-game lead over the Mets in the National League East. So in 10 days, they've lost 6.5 games in the standings to the Mets. Can't get much worse than this, Jim.
No, you can't. And I was going to point out they've lost 7.5 games in 15 days. I mean, that's a free fall. They've been, 1-9. The offense has disappeared. It's hard when you don't have Wheeler in this stretch. He's highest paid single season salary of any starting pitcher in Major League history. You don't have Harper, $330 million. You don't have Nola, so you're missing some big guns. And offensively, you're basically looking at 2 guys, Turner and Schwarber. And Schwarber's kind of in a little bit of a rut, which he's allowed because he's been so good, because he's human, because it's baseball and that happens. But when you have 2 hitters and one of them ain't hitting, they've scored 1 run in 4 of their last 5 games. I mean, they've gotten some pitching here and there. I know Luzardo struggled, but they've gotten some pitching, especially the last couple of days in Pittsburgh. But this is just an ugly stretch that they have to pull themselves out of, and it's not going to be easy. When your best player, Bryce Harper, we don't know when he's going to be back on the IL or on the IL. We don't know when he's going to be back. I'm very troubled that he just had 6 days off because he got hit in the elbow, and that didn't calm his wrist down, and now he had to go on the IL. I don't know, just an ugly weekend in Pittsburgh. Ruben, you were there. How ugly was it?
Well, it wasn't pretty. There's no question about that. But I think there's so many different things that are happening sort of at the same time. There are getting some offensive, quote unquote, production from Bohm and Castellanos, but it's not run production. They're getting some hits, but they're not driving the ball. They're not hitting the ball for extra base hits. They're getting literally almost nothing until, Marchand and Marsh hooked up yesterday on Sunday afternoon to produce 1 run for, the Phillies against Skenes. That bottom of the lineup has been really, really bad. I mean, it just really has been non-existent. And Bryson Stott has not stepped forward since, it's been it's a tough month of May for him and a tough early part of the June. And, he really hasn't moved forward. I'm not sure what the deal is, but, what he was doing in the early part of the season, getting on base and, he's still seeing pitches and that sort of thing. He's just not producing base hits and scoring runs and doing what you need to do at the top of the lineup. So it's a bad combination of things right now. And, Jim, you mentioned that Schwarber's gone a little cold, but again, he can't carry the entire team.
Right.
Other people in this lineup who have to do the damage. I think There was a downer when Luzardo had his 2 outings. I think that that brought that had a sort of a domino effect on some things. By and large, the rotation has really pitched well. I mean, those starting pitchers have done okay. I mean, Christopher Sanchez and Flores, Abel pitched well in his in his 2 outings that he's thrown. So I think the starting pitching is certainly a strength, but they are not getting any offensive production at all. When you lose Harper in the middle of it, even though he's gone, they should still be producing runs, and they're not doing it. I would not be surprised. I mean, you're not getting any production out of center field and left field, basically.
Got your second base.
And your second baseman's not doing a lot either. So you got 3 positions where you're talking about dead outs right now. And that makes it difficult, to produce runs if one of your big boys are sliding backwards. Trey Turner's like the only guy who's been super, super consistent. Castellanos is getting his hits, but there's a lot of times when he gets his hits, there's nobody on. He's not driving in runs or scoring runs because the guys behind him are not doing very much. So you're not getting the kind of run production that's really necessary to be sustainable. And that is concerning. And I do think that that's a change is going to be made. I know that they've already brought Otto Kemp. It was nice to see him get an opportunity. He's not going to be instant offense, but it might inject some life in it. He had a couple of tough days against a couple of tough pitchers, but I think he's going to get a chance to play. And you may see him float out to left field at some point when Harper gets back. And you may very well see Justin Crawford sometime soon. And once he's healthy, I think he's got a little bit of a quad thing going on right now. He was out of the lineup for a couple of days. But I think Dave Dombrowski was down there watching them in Charlotte. And I got to believe that at some point, sometime pretty soon, and Jim, you talked about it, the possibility of injecting a little bit of energy just for a guy just to make some contact and try to create some things and maybe steal a base and score a run. Yeah. You may be seeing Crawford sometime soon. He
gets like 2 hits a night, but he is out of the lineup now. He hasn't played in 3 days, I think.
3 days, yeah.
And but you've talked about it. We've talked about bringing him when you have to know that he's mentally ready because this is just an entirely different level here. But a point you've made a number of times, Ruben, you don't want to bring him when the balance of the team is struggling, so it feels like he's got to do too much or carry or change the tone. You want him to kind of blend in, so it's a little bit rock in a hard place. You got the injury. You don't want to bring him when everybody's struggling, but it's getting close to taking a look time, so it's interesting.
Ruben, you mentioned a change. So what do you think is the most likely change? So Rob Thompson, after the game on Sunday, was asked, is it time to call a team meeting? He said, maybe. He said he was asked, is it time to make a change to the lineup? He said, maybe. I've been thinking about a lot of things. If you had to put your money on the most likely thing to happen, we mentioned Justin Crawford coming up, a roster shakeup. What do you think is the most likely thing? Do you think they need a team meeting? Everybody loves to talk about team meetings, right? We know that. I mean, in baseball, you got to get the boys together and start throwing some stuff around and rallying the troops. What do you think is the most likely thing to happen this week or in the next couple weeks?
I mean, a team meeting's possible, but it may have to come from the team itself. I think it's anytime those things are sort of staged. I don't think they're. It has to sort of happen organically and from within. I'd rather have it come from the players than from the manager, to be honest with you. I think they hold a lot more water. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're not trying to play hard. That's not the issue. They're just not hitting. And I think that there's a difference between not wanting to play hard and not hitting. I don't think there's any issues with these guys trying to do well. They're not just packing it in. They've run up against some decent pitching, but they just need to be better. This is part of the game that they have to they have to strap it on and just play better. And as far as like change is concerned, I mean, I think the biggest change is to go ahead and let Turner be in the leadoff slot and just leave him there. I think that's one thing that he might consider. The other thing you might consider is if you don't bring Crawford up, maybe just go ahead and go with Johan Rojas in center field. Brandon Marsh has been having some struggles with like just balls in the air that are short. He hasn't been covering the ground as a center fielder. He made one very good catch against the wall, and I guess in right center field. That was a big catch. But I think he's been struggling a little bit defensively, and I think it's hurt them on some occasions. And I think that's gotten to the point where they may just say, you know what, let's just give Johan Rojas a chance to play. And if that doesn't happen, then they may very well bring Crawford. I don't know what the subsequent move's going to be. But they might shake some things up because it's obvious they're not getting things done.
Yeah, I know Sosa struggled on the last homestand. Sorry, Todd.
No, go ahead.
But do you think about? I mean, he's so streaky, But when he's good, he's pretty good, and he's pretty. He's like an accelerant, He helps. He lifts everything. Do you think about giving him a little run at second base? Righties and lefties.
I don't. No. Not for me. I think that they'll probably go in a platoon situation with the way they're swinging it, because Sosa's not been swinging it all that well either. And Sosa, to me, is a complimentary type player, and I do believe that he's really, really good at the job that he typically does when he plays more. I don't think he's as productive. I think he can add. He's a value add. There's no question about it. I love the way he plays. I love his energy. He's just been struggling too. Yeah. And so you have a whole bunch of guys who just haven't putting together good at bats. And that's problematic when you have that many guys go cold at the same time, and you're just not getting any production at all from the fifth hitter on. JT's got a couple of hits. He's, bouncing back from that injury, the groin injury, and, he hasn't really been as offensively productive as he's been in the past. So,
right.
So when you get past that fifth hitter in the lineup right now, it's sort of dead water right now.
And that's been more than just these last 10 games. It's kind of been a season-long thing for some of those spots. I mean, Stott was really good up through the end of April. Now, since the beginning of May, Bryson Stott is batting 190 with a 496 OPS in his last 32 games. 496 OPS in his last 32 games. Phillies second baseman this season hitting a combined 262, 692 OPS. That's 13th in baseball. Now here's where it gets bad. And you talk about the bottom third of the lineup, bottom four spots in the lineup. Phillies left fielders this season, Kepler, Wilson mostly, right, are batting a combined 204 with a 672 OPS, and they're platooning those guys. It's not like Kepler's facing a bunch of left-handed pitching, and they're playing the platoon advantage. That OPS, 672 OPS by Phillies left fielders, is 21st in baseball. Let's go to center field now. Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas are hitting a combined 223 with a 602 OPS. That's 26th in baseball. So that's where people start going, Justin Crawford. But I agree with you guys, like the hamstring issue right now, do you want to bring him up if he's got a hamstring cramp the last few days, missed a few days? Maybe you don't want him to go out there and push too hard, blow himself out. You don't want him to go up and feel like he has to save the team, which is I feel like that would be a natural reaction for him if he got called up right now. JT Realmuto is batting 223 with a 647 OPS. Each would be career lows. Phillies catchers are hitting a combined 212 with a 629 OPS, which is 23rd in baseball. Since May 1st, those four positions combined are batting 206, 614 OPS. Only the A's and Rockies are getting worse production from those four positions than the Phillies. So
I have to say this about Max Kepler. When I saw him in spring training, I really liked his swing. I liked the way they started off the season. He just looked like he was in a good position to have success. I'm not sure if I don't know whether he feels uncomfortable not being in a platoon, because he's never really platooned, and now he's in the last year or so, he hasn't had the sort of production that he's had in the past. I'm just surprised that he hasn't been more productive as a hitter. just from what I saw in the very beginning of the season and during the course of the spring. But hey, this is what happens sometimes, and he's not getting it done. And there's a lot of guys, I mean, you sit there and, okay, I'm going to point the finger at this guy and this guy. It's sort of collective in a lot of ways. There's only really a couple of guys really having the types of years that you would expect, and that's Schwarber and Turner. And beyond that, even Bryce Harper has been in sort of fits and starts too, hasn't been the Bryce Harper that you would expect. So when you only have two guys really getting it done at a really super high level, and Castellanos is probably, as far as getting hits, is the most consistent. Bohm has bounced back a little bit, but you're just not getting a lot of the slug and production and run production other than from two guys, and that's not going to be able to get it done in a lineup that needs nine hitters to produce.
You mentioned platoon, that maybe it doesn't sit well, or Kepler might be having a tough time adjusting to it. You don't want to be in a platoon. Go out and have about 2.5, 3 good weeks and force
Correct.
their hand to play.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Play
every day. Do it by producing. No question.
And that's the same thing with Stott too. Everybody wanted Stott to play every day, but
including me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean,
listen,
we talked about it.
I believe in this kid, and I
should be an everyday guy.
But he hasn't been getting it done, and it needs to change because they all need to be better.
Platoons are usually a default setting because something's going wrong in the attempt to play the guy every day.
Right. We'll be right back.
This one's easy for us to talk about. I'm a huge fan of hungerroot. They're delivering groceries that we want and groceries that we didn't know we want, but we want.
Oh yeah, they every box that I get from hungerroot has a new snack in it that I'm like, oh, this looks interesting, and then I try it, and I'm like, oh, I might need some more of those. So they're great at not only getting the groceries you want, but they surprise you with tasty little treats that you didn't know you needed.
Agreed. Turkey jerky. There was like a chocolate pudding thing where I'm like, I'm not a big chocolate pudding fan. Then I have it, and I'm like, this is awesome. So they can cater to your needs. You got gluten-free, or you're looking for a certain diet that you want to fulfill, or there are certain items that you love. They learn along with you. You let them know your preferences. They just nail it. Take advantage of the exclusive FT offer, please. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungerroot.com/FT. Use code FT. That's hungerroot.com/FT, code FT, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life.
Guys, we're going to challenge you right now because it is Monday, which means it is time for Manco and Manco Best Week. Never has there been a Manco and Manco like this one.
No.
This is going to be, I don't think anybody had this in mind when we decided to do Manco and Manco Best Week. Manco and Manco Best Week, of course, because Manco Manco is the best of the best. This is where we pick our best Phillies player, play, performance, whatever we choose from the past week. I have somebody in mind, but it's a little bit.
Go ahead, Tom.
I was gonna say, there's not really much on the player side, so I was gonna say Otto Kemp getting promoted to the big leagues finally.
Nice.
A long journey to the big leagues, a great story. For those that don't know, he was undrafted out of Division II, Point Noma Nazarene University in 2022. You think about guys being undrafted, signing as undrafted free agents, and then making it all the way to the big leagues and hitting at every level. And so it's nice to see Otto Kemp finally get that opportunity to get that call and join the Phillies this weekend. Who knows where it goes? Maybe he starts seeing some time in left field. I don't know. Maybe he gets a little bit of playing time here as the team struggles. But cool story for the Phillies and a great story for Otto Kemp. I mean, you go from, he's talked about this, not being drafted, going, I don't know, like, how does this work? Do I sign with somebody? Like, is my baseball career over? He signs with the Phillies, boom. A few years later, he's in the big league. So Otto Kemp is my Manco Best Week.
That's a great one. And I will say, I got a chance to talk to him a little bit. I didn't talk to him a whole lot during the course of spring training, but got a chance to chat with him just briefly and to congratulate him. He is a wonderful kid, just a really, really good kid. And I've heard that from other people in the organization. Grinder, plays hard, runs pretty well. He's not, not necessarily a base stealer, but he's stolen some bases over the course of his career. Had 11 bags, I think, and only 2 caught stealing so far this year in AAA. But he does some things, bat the ball, has some power, opposite way. He can do some things offensively. Now, will it translate into the major leagues? I don't know, but it's nice to give him an opportunity. That's a great call, Todd. Who you got, you?
Boy, it's a tough one. I might go with Ted Davis, Ben Davis's son. Is going
There we go. There we go. That's a nice call. They're going to the College World Series.
Slugging first baseman from the University of Louisville, headed to Omaha for the College World Series. But how about Mick Abel?
Good one.
Great.
Good outing in Toronto. Second big league start. Just opening some eyes and continuing what has been a really good turnaround season, where I think obviously he's shown a lot of physical ability, but you knew he had that when he was a first round pick. I think he's just shown a lot of moxie and a lot of character, digging himself out of a really difficult season last year, putting himself back on the map, and becoming a legit contributor. So I'd go with Mick Abel.
Great one. Hasn't walked a batter yet, which is amazing.
Nice. That is an amazing. That's the most amazing thing. I mean, he's handled himself with great poise and great maturity. Another wonderful kid. Super signing. I'm going to go with Christopher Sanchez, man. I think Christopher Sanchez has really thrown the ball well. And he deserved to win the baseball game yesterday against Paul Skenes. It was a really terrific game. He picks up the L because, they threw him out there to try to get O'Neal Cruz out there, which made sense and was the right thing to do. He had handled O'Neal Cruz so well. He embarrassed the guy for 3 at-bats. And then he walks him on 4 straight pitches. But, 67% strikes in his last outing, 7 innings, 2 runs, 2 walks, and 9 punch outs. And then, the game before, he didn't have his best stuff, but he kept them in the game. So he's backed up, 2 pretty damn good games against Toronto and Pittsburgh that probably deserved. He did win that game, but probably deserved to win 2 games. And I'm going to stay with Christopher Sanchez as my Manco Banco best of the week.
Look at that. We challenged ourselves and we came up with it.
Yeah, we did. We figured it out. Ranger Suarez, he should get
Ranger pitched well.
Again, he pitched really, really well also. And he deserves an honorable mention as well.
Yeah. All good choices. All good choices. Jim, you mentioned something at the top of the show about Bryce Harper, and his wrist, and I had the same thought that came in my head. I was like, wait, wrist? He just missed 5 games, 6 days, and he plays 3 games in Toronto, and it's like, yeah, this wrist has really been bothering me. And the troubling thing to me was that we know he had a wrist thing last year, but he said the pain he didn't feel pain free until December. And I'm sitting there going, oh boy, okay, well, what exactly is going on here? This is concerning to me. If they have to shut him down mid-season, and if this is something that lingered, they were knocked out, mid-October, and he still felt something in his wrist for a month and a half after the season started. How worried, how concerned, how troubled are you by what's going on with Bryce's wrist?
Very, very, for the timelines you just laid out. If they're talking about resting it right now and seeing if it'll quote unquote calm down. He just had 6 days of rest after he got hit by Strider. He had the off season and it lingered and it popped back up this year. When things keep recurring like that, you're like, okay, what's going on? Does it have to be addressed surgically? And that leads to the question of when will he be back in this season, 2025? How long will it be? Can they survive without him? They've played over injuries in the last few years, but I always hear the cliche next man up, and it's a great characteristic to have, but it has limits. Mm-hmm. And this guy's an important piece on this team.
Well, particularly because of the rest of the team's not swinging the bat all that well. And so you really need him to add some production. But I'm concerned too. I used to talk to Pat Gillick about this all the time. Wrists with a hitter and back with a hitter, they're tricky. and you just never know, what can be happening there. I mean, I remember Jason Worth was like a big deal. And when Jason Worth went down with the Dodgers, and we really kept an eye on it, Pat did, and, did a lot of research on what was going on. They finally fixed the wrist.
But it almost ended his career until he found an answer.
And he bounced back. So I don't think it's as serious as that. They've done the MRIs. They've done the studies. It doesn't seem, at least, to be too serious. But maybe this is the right time to calm it down and make sure that he's okay for the rest of the season. Will that happen? Can you guarantee that with a guy who swings as violently as he does? Because he's a really aggressive swinger. I mean, he doesn't hold back a whole lot. Is this the right time to calm it down? Probably. Hopefully it gets calmed down and it's not an issue, but you never know.
And the elephant in the room is, and Ruben, you lived this, we covered it. Guys get north of 30, they get to be 32, 33, and these injuries, they just pop up. And health becomes such a huge factor in keeping a team together and having a winning team. We saw it, with Utley, with Howard, when they started breaking down, with Doc Halladay. And Bryce is getting these nagging injuries, or even maybe a little more than nagging. It seems like every year. And
I don't think he's played a full season in the last, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And he's played 160 games or 150 games in the last 4 or 5 years.
And how many years has he been? He's only 32, but
he's got some mileage because he's played since he was 19. He's been
unbelievable.
Since he was 19
he's
or 20.
His odometer is high, and he's got how many years left? 6 years left on this deal. And he's so important. I mean, it's just, big picture wise, it's a concern.
Yeah, I think talent wise, he's still sort of at the peak of his career, but as far as his health is concerned, maybe not the peak.
Right. Yeah.
Ryan Howard was at the peak of his production, and then all of a sudden he wasn't because he got hurt.
Right.
Chase Utley was at the peak of his production, and all of a sudden he wasn't because the knees flared.
Went down.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah. So it's something definitely. I mean, everybody's gonna be watching this, trying to get any sort of, listen to everything that comes out of his mouth over the next few weeks in terms of his recovery, how the wrist is feeling. They'll be asking Rob Thompson every day how the wrist is feeling, and understandably so, because if this thing lingers, or he comes back and he goes back on, and I think everybody, of course, their head is going into those dark places because everything else is so dark right now in terms of what's going on with the team, so.
Yeah, the one thing you don't want to do in this situation, though, is a waste of pitching, because the pitching's really good as far as the starting pitching is concerned. And once Wheeler's back, he's pitching tonight. Congratulations to he and Dominique having their fourth kid. Third or fourth. Am I right? Fourth?
Fourth.
Yeah, pretty cool. But getting Ola back, and then you create that depth that you needed. And remember, we were talking about depth, and all of a sudden, boom, 3 or 4 things happen, and now you're going down to get McAble, and Luzardo's struggling, and they got to straighten him out, and that's going to be a fascinating start on Wednesday to see how he bounces back. I will be fascinated by it to see what tweaks that they make, whether it's tipping pitches or not tipping pitches, or too flat with his fastball, or arm angle, whatever the case may be. But I'm sure they're doing everything to try to avoid that and to try to get him back on track where he was in the early part of the season.
You mentioned the good pitching. Can't waste good pitching. So they've lost 5 in a row, 3 of them by a score of 2-1.
Right.
That's wasting good pitching.
That is wasting good pitching. And, the bullpen, speaking of the bullpen, we haven't really talked about that. I was looking at some of their numbers, but, last several weeks, the strikeout rate is way down. The walk rate is up. So they've been putting too many guys on base, not striking out enough guys. So you see those little bloopers going to the outfield, and they lose the game. So we've been talking about a lot of doom and gloom, so to speak. But I was thinking about something yesterday watching Paul Skenes pitch, and this is not going to happen, but just as a thought exercise, there's been a few stories written lately nationally about would the Pirates trade Paul Skenes? And the Pirates have said, we're not going to trade Paul Skenes, but it's natural to think that way, right? Because they're a bad organization up until they've been a bad team. But just hypothetically, if you were to call the Pirates, Ruben, Jim, and say your ownership said, I don't care what you got to do. You got to go out and get Paul Skenes. I want Paul Skenes. Your job is on the line. What kind of package would you have to put together to convince the Pirates to say, okay, we will do this?
Well, it'd have to start with Painter or Abel or both. And then you're talking about Aiden Miller and Crawford. You're talking about three of those guys. Right. He's that good. He's the best pitcher in baseball. So that's where it would start.
Okay. What would you, if you were the GM of the Phillies, would you give up Abel, Miller, and Crawford for Paul Skenes right now?
I would.
I probably would. I mean,
I would, just because I'm lacking with the pitching. And listen, I know it just kills your depth overall and your but if I'm the GM, I would certainly do it because he's that good.
And if I'm
that good, and if you lose him and he gets hurt, maybe you lose him for a year, you still have him under control for another 4 years. So,
but if I'm Pittsburgh, I go, I don't want Abel, I want Andrew Painter. So there you go. Right? I was just thinking of that because there have been those stories written about,
and I would consider it. And I would consider it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
No, it's not. It's not.
Listen, you're basically blowing out your entire system, and you want to have some sustainability later on, and you're hoping that Crawford can be a piece, and you're hoping that Aiden Miller can be, a piece. And Aiden Miller's starting to come around and play much better lately, starting to get his feet more accustomed to being in Double-A. So, again, they're prospects. They're not major league players. They're prospects still.
Right. And they seem to think that Andrew Painter can be maybe not Paul Skenes level, but that he would be really, really, really good. So if you really, really, really believe that, then maybe
he could be.
Yeah, and he could be. It could be. So then maybe you hold on to those guys. So
let me ask you, conversely, if you were the GM of the Pirates, would that be enough for you?
It would not.
Yeah, you really
would not be enough
with all the team control that Paul Skenes has, and just knowing his stature in the game, and boy,
I would not give him up for those three players.
Yeah, you would need more. You would want more.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe somebody off the big league roster, maybe an Edward.
I need somebody that had some control over who's already producing at the major league level, and then 2 or 3 pieces beyond that.
Yeah.
Do you think
that's what I would be looking for?
Do you think, and this, I don't know, maybe this is a dumb question, but do you think the commissioner would step in and say, whoa, what are you doing here?
I would not. I do not think he would.
Yeah.
Okay.
He hasn't stepped in other situations, so I don't think he would now.
Yeah.
He hasn't stepped in. He didn't step in when the Dodgers did the deferrals.
That's true.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, but Charlie Finley was like selling off guys, but that's a different scenario. But it just seems to me you draft a guy like Paul Skenes, and that can excite a town that needs some baseball excitement, and be awfully sad to trade a guy like that.
Oh, it would be a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the one to throw stones, but Pirates have sort of struggled to draft the kind of quality that they've needed over the last 10, 12 years. I mean, and they've had high picks for a while, and they haven't really fortified. They've done pretty well with the pitching, but as far as offensive players, just really haven't been able to hit on them.
Be ashamed to waste some of Paul Skenes' good years.
How big would he be in Philly? Would he be bigger than Jalen Hurts?
Paul Skenes?
Paul Skenes would be massive.
Yeah, because he's got the partner in Liv, So
Livy Dunn, he's got that, and the guy
much bigger market.
Yeah, much bigger market. And he's just so freaking good, and he's so much fun to watch.
He's really good. He's really dominant, and he's got 7 pitches that he can go to that are really dominant pitches. I mean, he's literally got 5 double plus pitches. And when you have 5 double plus pitches, man, that's a tough arsenal to deal with when you're hitting.
Yeah, he's probably the only guy that I didn't say the only guy in baseball, but he would give, in terms of star power in the city on the Phillies, he would give Bryce a run for his money. I feel like
he would.
Yes, he would.
He would.
There'll be a lot of
because he'd be a perennial Cy Young Award candidate.
Yeah, Yeah,
as long as he stayed healthy.
right. He throws for all those reasons. Anyway, so it ain't happening. But I was thinking about it yesterday. I'm like, what would the
It's a
Phillies?
good dream. It's a good dream.
Yeah,
They would lose more. They would lose more 2-1 games.
yeah, right now they would. Right now, but he's already.
That's a great point, James. Is a great point.
He's already used to that in Pittsburgh, Jim. So I don't think it would phase him one bit. He just keep going out there and putting up 2s and 1s. So the Phillies open a three-game series on Monday night against the Cubs. Monday night, Cubs lefty Matthew Boyd against Zach Wheeler, 6:45 start. Tuesday is right-hander Colin Ray against Mick Abel. Mick Abel getting his third start in the big leagues. That's a 6:45 start. And then the series finale on Wednesday afternoon. This is a big one. They're all big, but Ben Brown against Jesus Luzardo. They need Jesus Luzardo to bounce back in a major, major way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game because I want to see Ben Brown pitch, former Phillies farmhand from Long Island, New York.
Yep.
Good kid. Came back from Tommy John surgery, real hard worker. They traded for David Robertson, right?
Yes, that was a David Robertson.
And I'll just point this out. So our good buddy John Brazier. He does a spot on the pregame show, or the radio pregame show, with the Phillies, like once a week. And do you remember when Fergie Jenkins was in town for Jackie Robinson Day?
Yeah.
Obviously, Phillies traded him to the Cubs. They traded Ben Brown to the Cubs, but Jenkins sees a lot of the Cubs, I guess, I guess they were talking about Jenkins watches a lot of baseball. Fergie Jenkins and Brazier said any one young player that you see around the game excite you, and he without hesitation said Ben Brown. So
really,
that was an interesting connection between the two with the trade and all. But the guy's got good baseball eyes. So Ben Brown, big, tall right-hander, a lot of talent. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like. But more importantly, for the Phillies, Jesus Luzardo needs to calm everybody down a little bit.
He'd like to call. I like to have him calm me down too a little bit. I really like this kid. I really believe in him, and hopefully he can bounce back and figure out what's been ailing him.
Guys, it can only go up from here, we think.
Yep.
We think. We'll be back. We will be back later this week.
Smell you later, boys.
Bye, Jim.
The Philly Show is brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. Subscribe to The Philly Show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like us, give us a review. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, and Threads. Find Ruben's analysis before, during, and after Phillies games on NBC Sports Philadelphia, on the Sports Radio 94 WIP Morning Show and MLB Network. Find Jim at allphly.com. Find me at MLB.com, the Phillies Beat newsletter, and MLB Network.